Swale, amid Subquaquilum. Good day, everybody, and welcome. For folks who may not know who I am, my name is Len Pierre. My ancestral name is Palikuluk, and I am Coast Salish from Katzie First Nation on my father's side and Musqueam First Nation on my mother's side. I am the owner and CEO of Len Pierre Consulting. We're a Indigenous consulting group that specialize in education, training, project management, cultural advising for any willing organization throughout North America, Turtle Island. Um, I am recording this video from my home territory of Katzie First Nation, located in what is colonially known as the city of Pitt Meadows. And I'm here today to share with you, offer you some awareness, teachings, and some things to do in recognition and honor of it being the month of June, also known as National Indigenous History Month, also known as Pride Month. And in the days leading up to June 21st, 2024, I hope to equip you with some context or some things and ideas that you can do to celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Day this year. So, where did National Indigenous Peoples Day come from in Canada? So, June 21st being National Indigenous Peoples Day is very intentional. As First Nations, Métis, Inuit people, the summer solstice has been an incredible pivotal moment throughout our seasonal calendar. As Indigenous peoples, we have a very strong tie to the land, the territory, and as a result, we also have an incredible relationship with the seasons, summer, fall, winter, and spring. We have such an incredible relationship to the seasons because it's the seasons that evoke the manifestations of our territory. So different foods, different medicines, different animals live their lives according to the seasons and the seasonal calendar. So it's only natural that we, as a part of the land and territory and water and the environment, that we live according to the seasons. So the reason for selecting June 21st as the day for National Indigenous Peoples Day is really honoring the summer solstice. In my Coast Salish culture, our New Year was not on January 31st, not January 31st, December 31st, January 1st. That's a Gregorian calendar New Year. That's a very colonial New Year. We have the Nishka New Year, we have the Chinese New Year. There's so many cultures around the planet that have different days that recognize the new day of a new year. For us as Coast Salish people in these lands and territories, you know, uh, summer solstice, the longest day of the year, was very much our version of what would be or could be a new year. Now, we didn't have a traditional new year, but that would be the start of a new year when the sun shines highest and brightest in the sky for the longest time. But it also signaled the beginning of abundance because the summer solstice was a time of gathering, a time of fishing, a time of living in abundance of all that our territories had to offer. Other seasons were broken down by, the winter was known as a time for gathering and spirituality. The fall was a time for hunting and preparing for the winter. In the spring, it was a time for preparation and renewal. So the season that we're heading into is a time of abundance. It's a time of fishing and traveling and just being together in community. So it was a celebration. It was a huge positive thing in our cultures, in our communities, and in our nations. It was a pivotal time because if you can imagine surviving these lands and territories 1,000 years ago with out without the technology and the electricity and the things that really make our lives comfortable today. Surviving in these lands and territories will be incredibly difficult and incredibly challenging. And so our revitalization was tied into the land. And so our energy and our strength came from the sun. And that's why June 21st is the intentional day for celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day. When it comes to celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day, why is it here? Why does it exist? It is really meant to, it's something that we've asked for a very long time as First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people to be honored and recognized by this colonial state to celebrate, learn, and reflect on the really rich, rich culture of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples and our incredibly dynamic history. You know, Canada, I always forget this. Do you know how old Canada is? I can't remember. I think it's like 156, 157, if I recall correctly. As Indigenous peoples, we've been here since time immemorial. Time immemorial. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Before the first limestone brick was laid down at the Great Pyramids of Egypt, we were here doing what we do. Before the first stone was erected at Stonehenge, we were here. We've been in these lands and territories surviving and thriving since before the Great Flood, since before the last ice age. And that's a testament to how much history, rich history we have as Indigenous peoples. It's also a testament to how strong we are, how resilient we are. The fact that we, as Indigenous peoples, have survived 3 apocalypses. The Ice Age was very apocalyptic. The Great Flood, very apocalyptic. And the smallpox pandemic, when colonizers brought the smallpox disease over from Europe, 90%, 95% of our population was decimated. But we bounce back. We come back because we have an intergenerational strength and intergenerational resilience and an intergenerational grace about us as Indigenous peoples. I say intergenerational grace because it is important to know, if you don't know this yet, that once upon a time in this country, it used to be illegal for us to be Indigenous. Did you know that? With the anti-potlatch ban in the late 1800s, the Canadian federal government made it illegal for us to speak our language, to sing our songs, to dance our dances. It was so illegal for us to practice our culture, it was illegal for us to gather in numbers, greater than 6 or more in some First Nations communities. It was illegal for us to gather in numbers because the government had a tremendous fear that if we gathered, we would speak our language, we would sing our songs, and we would dance our dances. So I know you know this because of COVID-19. Uh, we're familiar with a thing or two about physical gathering restrictions and social distancing. A lot of Canadians think that's the first time that's happened in this country. That's not the first time that's happened in this country. Through the potlatch ban, it was legal for us to gather numbers greater than 6 or more for 60 years, 6-0. So the fact that we have culture that's alive and well today, the fact that we have drumming and singing today, the fact that we as Indigenous people are still here today is such a celebration. It's such a celebration that we have the ability to endure, to withstand, and reemerge when Canada had truly, honestly envisioned a day that there would be no First Nations people, there would be no Inuit people, there would be no Métis people. Canada dreamed of a day we would not be here. The fact that we are here matters. It's a testament to our strength. It's a testament to our resilience. And I say it's a testament to our grace because we are a graceful people with the sheer fact that we share our knowledge, we share our culture, we share our protocols, We share our songs and our dances with all of you. What a testament of grace that is to share it so graciously and generously and not in a way that is shaming or guilting people. So that's how I look at National Indigenous Peoples Days. It's a recognition, it's a celebration of our ability to endure, to be resilient, to be strong, and just the richness. Because the government, as much as the government tried to apply cultural genocide and immerse us into the dominant Canadian culture at the time, um, we're still here. That's the way I look at National Indigenous Peoples Day. And by you participating, by you celebrating, is what this day is for. It's not just for us. It's not just for First Nations, Métis, Inuit people and elders. It is for you too. So it is a day to participate. Please don't wait for an invitation. If you see a poster or a community flyer of a local celebration in your neighborhood, in your community, or that's really close to you, that invitation is to you. You don't have to be Indigenous to go to these things. We don't do it for ourselves. We do it for all Canadians to celebrate, reflect, and enjoy the rich culture that we have. Buy Indigenous things this month and every month of the year. And then, of course, it is a day to learn and reflect as well. One of the things I will say, because this comes up all the time, is I see a lot of orange t-shirts on June 21st every single year. That's not a bad thing. I think that a lot of Canadians think that orange t-shirts are a sign of allyship, which they are. But it is important to know that the orange t-shirt, Orange Shirt Day, is affiliated with September 30th, which now is known as the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. But it is also to recognize and honor that every child matters, given the long legacy of residential schools in this country. So while the orange t-shirt is a great reconciliation statement and every child matters and is geared toward September 30th, you don't necessarily have to wear your orange shirts on June 21st. There are other ways to mobilize or reflect your allyship. You can wear other Indigenous designed t-shirts, lanyards, pins, those types of things. I would love to see a day where the orange t-shirt is, it's the intention of the orange t-shirt is more solemn in nature. So to have on a day of celebration and recognition, I think is really kind of confusing the two. Take, for example, the poppy. The poppy is meant for remembrance, right? And we only wear it in the days and weeks leading up to Remembrance Day. It's kind of like wearing your poppies at Canada Day. We're confusing the two. So please think about other Indigenous t-shirts or things that you can buy to reflect and honor your allyship on June 21st. This is a big question I get all the time. I teach the masses. I get to speak to hundreds, if not sometimes 1,000 people every single week. And one of the questions I get is, what can I do? What can I do to reconcile, to be an ally, or to celebrate June 21st? Here are just 4 things that I came up with off the top of my head. Number 1, stay informed. Stay informed. And thanks to the digital era and technology and social media, information is so readily available. It's at our fingertips. So I encourage you to follow Indigenous news stories, podcasts, authors, social media influencers, scholars, and activists. Staying informed is your best way to be in relationship to reconciliation. You can buy Indigenous, buy from local Indigenous catering companies, go and eat at Indigenous restaurants or food trucks, buy from local Indigenous artists, contract in consultants and elders, knowledge keepers, hire Indigenous youth. That is what I would describe as economic reconciliation. It's not all of reconciliation. It's more granular, small, interpersonal forms of economic reconciliation, because economic reconciliation can also happen at a nation to nation level, meaning major multi-million dollar contracts and negotiations between large entities and land-based nations where they are doing work. Number three, pass on what you have learned. I got that one from Yoda, from Star Wars. Our elders always say, don't be stingy with your teachings, meaning that the knowledge that you are learning about Indigenous peoples is not meant to rest up here idly. It's meant to be evoked and it's meant to be passed on. And you know this if you're a mom, a dad, a grandparent, an auntie, or an uncle. You know that the young humans in your life are coming home from school every day and telling you what they're learning about Indigenous peoples. They're wearing their orange shirts. They're talking about the residential schools. They're speaking our language, which is no small thing. So talk to your children, talk to your work besties, talk to your work husband, your work wife, generate a conversation about what you're learning and pass that knowledge on. Buy an Indigenous authored book. And then when you're done reading that book, gift it, regift it, pass it on so that the learning continues. And lastly, don't be afraid to start to think Indigenous. Thinking Indigenous is embracing decolonization. If you work in healthcare, do some research into decolonizing healthcare. If you work in education, do some research in how to decolonize teaching and learning or pedagogy or schools. Apply two-eyed seeing. Think in 7 generations. That's thinking Indigenous. As Indigenous peoples, we don't think in 5-year strategic plans or academic calendar years. Our plans span beyond centuries. That's thinking Indigenous. And I think that the world would look a lot different today if you take worldly things, worldly issues like the climate crisis and global warming. Our our response to the climate catastrophe would be drastically different if we had politicians, CEOs, and major corporations thinking about the next 7 generations. It would be drastically different. There's a magic to learn in thinking intergenerationally, thinking about what kind of ancestor you want to be. So these are just a few examples of ways that you can get involved. And please do get involved. Another big question I'm often asked is, well, do you have any books that you would recommend? These are my top 4 favorite books that I recommend if you're looking to continue on your learning. One is by Robin Kimmerer, who wrote the book on braiding sweetgrass, which is the teachings of plants and the teachings of medicine. Another one that I recommend often that will orientate you towards the colonial nature of our country is 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act by Bob Joseph. And I'm totally biased on this one, but if you do have young humans in your household or in your life, check out this book, Acorns for Willie, which is authored by my good friend, my colleague, who works with me at LPC, Nadine McFadden. And another one, if you're interested in stories and Indigenous pedagogy and learning from a Coast Salish person, check out Joanne Archibald's Indigenous story work. Oh, and totally biased, shameless plug for myself. My cousin brother, uncle, and I co-authored, well, we were contributors actually. We didn't just 2 of us write a book. We contributed to this book called Critter, which is how to mobilize Indigenous resilience. And it's actually an interactive workbook where you can learn about territory acknowledgements, my favorite teachings that I've received from elders, and they should be available on Staples, at Staples, online at Staples, or Amazon. All of these, I think, are available on Amazon. So they're just a click away. Follow a leader on social media. These are my top 4 that I often recommend. Sheena, James Jones, Wab Knu, and Adrian and Stephen Matthias, which are Two-Spirit performers. Also honoring and recognizing and celebrating and upholding all of our two-spirit relatives who identify as gay, lesbian, trans, queer, bisexual, two-spirit, non-binary, non-conforming. With that, thank you so much for watching this short and sweet video. I hope that has offered some knowledge, some awareness, or a gentle and warm invitation to come and celebrate with us. Come be with us on June 21st this year. We welcome you with open arms. If you have questions about it, don't be shy, don't be a stranger. Send me an email. My email is len@lenpierre Consulting. Check out our website if you're into resources, online tools, those types of things. My website is lenpierreconsulting.com. And of course, shameless plug for myself, if you want to continue your learning journey with me, I always invite folks to follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have a new podcast called the Len Pierre Consulting Podcast, and we also have a YouTube channel called the Len Pierre Consulting Channel. So don't be afraid to subscribe, follow, or just join our community. With that, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have some fun. I hope you learn this month, and I hope you have a safe and enjoyable summer as well. Thank you.